Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Adam Levine, and I'm the Executive Director here at the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, or NYMTC. And we've got what we think is a very interesting forum that we want to discuss with you on moving accessibly regional human services transportation. This is a topic that is close to, I think, just everybody at some point experiences a need in their lives, whether they're in a baby carriage or somewhere in the middle of their lives and they have some accessibility issues, or a little bit later in life and maybe move a little slower or with a little bit more difficulty than they did earlier, or all of the above. If you pass through life and you have those challenges throughout your life, this is definitely an area where we want to hear from you and get your feedback on ways that we want to consider improvements to the transportation system over the next 30 years, both immediate improvements, short-term improvements, and long-term. So we've got what we think is a really interesting series of slides and information to share with you, and then we want to get your feedback so that we can incorporate it into the transportation planning. You'll hear more about that from the folks that you're going to hear from in just a couple minutes, but I have the pleasure of introducing Stephanie Brooks, who will talk you through the next little bit of our presentation. Stephanie?
Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Just so we all have a little sense of our ground rules of how these webinars work, you'll remain muted, but you can see in the chat that there's a lot of ways you can communicate and let us know your thoughts. Hopefully the person who said they couldn't hear, they can hear now because the volume should be working on this presentation. We're going to be polling you to get some feedback on your thoughts. So we're going to be using an application called Poll Everywhere. So you can use your browser or your phone, any application you have to answer any of these questions, and you'll see your results in real time in these questions. And we'll walk you through the polling technology. Again, the chat window will be available for any comments you have. This workshop is being recorded, and if you are an AICP, there are 1.5 credits available for this presentation. There'll be a link at the end of the meeting so you can see where to qualify for those credits. So here, I think everyone here is familiar with WebEx, but you'll see on the presentation screen where the chat window is and where you can type any of your messages. And just going over our agenda, we will be giving you a little bit more detail about NYMTC and what we're doing and about our Plan 25, a little bit about using Poll Everywhere and how it works, start getting your feedback on some of your top of mind issues that you have as we move forward in the presentation, a little bit more about the services we're wanting to get feedback on, and then a discussion via the chat and via the polls because we want to hear from you. And we'll take it away. I introduce our Jerry Bogaz at NYMTC. Take it away, Jerry.
Good afternoon, folks. So this is a little bit of an introduction to who we are and what the role of our regional long-range planning is in terms of bringing funding into our region. And we want to provide you this information for context, and then we're going to be asking you a lot of questions and gathering your input. So NYMTC, the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, is a metropolitan planning organization, and our planning jurisdiction includes New York City, Long Island, and the Lower Hudson Valley. You can see the points of our mission. We provide a planning forum. We provide sound technical analysis. We work with our member agencies to develop a shared regional vision. And importantly, we work with our members to capture the maximum amount of federal funds that we can in our region so that we can perform transportation improvements. Next slide. So NYMTC is a membership. It's a membership organization. It is a regional council made up of a number of different jurisdictions and agencies. To the left on this slide, you'll see 5 logos of 5 different suburban counties: Westchester, Rockland, and Putnam counties to the north, Nassau and Suffolk counties to the east. Their county executives are members of the NYMTC Council. To the right, you'll see the New York City Department of City Planning and New York City DOT. Their commissioners are members of the council, along with the state's transportation commissioner and the chief executive officer of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Those are our 9 voting members. Those members make decisions on how to use federal dollars in our region. Below them are 7 advisory members that we have, including New Jersey Transit and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, as well as several others, and 3 federal oversight agencies. Together, this is NYMTC. This is the regional council that makes up NYMTC, and this is the body that's responsible for bringing federal dollars into our region. Next slide. So again, the region is the 5 boroughs of New York City, 3 suburban counties to the north, and 2 to the east, a total of 10 counties when you include the 5 boroughs. Next slide. So one of the things that we're required to do as a council is to produce a regional transportation plan. That plan has to be updated every 4 years. So although we do have a current plan that is in effect right now, we are working on our next plan, which will be adopted in September of 2025. These plans have to have a minimum 20-year planning horizon. In our case, we do more than that. This next plan will be a 29-year planning horizon. And they have to contain long-range and short-range strategies and actions that could make use of federal dollars to improve the transportation system in our region. They also have to include all projects and strategies within a certain financial plan. So the financial plan is a very important component of the overall plan, and it establishes what we think we can fit into the likely resources we'll be receiving in the long term. Next slide. Our members have been working on a strategic framework for the next plan. As you can see here, they have identified and proposed 9 guiding principles for the regional plan and the planning process, considering the needs of all users, making the best use of federal resources, considering all modes of transportation, planning for modal shifts, connections, accessibility, and operability, supporting multi-agency approaches, collaborating with other government entities that are not members of NYMTC, engaging the public and stakeholders, as we're doing through these workshops, investing in collection and sharing of data, and being open to innovation and technological advances. Next slide. In addition to these guiding principles, they've identified areas for 6 vision goals. And the goal statements that accompany these areas are more extensive than what you see here, but these are the categories of these goals: safety and security, infrastructure, resiliency, congestion, land use, and transportation equity. Next slide. So there are a number of special plan elements that will be part of this next plan. These are often, in most cases, required by the federal regulations, and or they're required to bring federal dollars into the region themselves. The one that's highlighted, the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan, will be the focus of our workshop this afternoon, and the input we're gathering today will be considered in the development of the next version of this coordinated plan, as we call it. Next slide. So now I guess I go back to Stephanie, and you're going to take us through Poll Everywhere.
Yes, you got it. So Poll Everywhere is a polling software technology that works through your screen. So you see in the chat a link to www.pollev.com, or actually you don't even have to type in the www, just pollev.com/NYMTC. You can click the chat link. There, WebEx does ask you if you want to go beyond that, security. You can click yes. If you have any trouble, you can just type it into your browser yourself, just pollev.com/NYMTC. And you'll click your name and you'll click continue. And you will be getting prompts on your browser that will ask you questions, and you'll see where you can place feedback in those questions. So we're already seeing people giving responses. Wonderful. Where are you participating from? So here you should see a screen that shows a map of the NYMTC region. You can place a little, just click your mouse or your finger, whatever you're using, wherever you're coming from, and it should show up on the screen. So we have good representation. We have Nassau, Queens, we have Manhattan. Give people just another 30 seconds or so to get familiar with the platform. And if you have any trouble accessing polls, or if there's something you'd like, some feedback you'd like to give, and the poll, you don't find the poll sufficient, you can always put your comments into the chat, chat is available. We've got Westchester here. Great. It's wonderful to see a broad representation throughout the NYMTC region. We'll give it another 10 seconds or so. Rockland, wonderful. Almost every county is represented here. And another 5 seconds. All right, so then the next question is, are you representing an organization today? So are you federal? Are people already responding? Excellent. An agency? Are you private citizen, community group? Perhaps a transportation for provider of coordinated public transit, human services transportation. Are you a business that purchased these transportation services? Just good to get a sense of what type of stakeholders are in our meeting today. Great, we'll give this another 30 seconds or so. That's excellent, thank you all. Right, and so we'll move on to the next slide. We have a lot of questions we'd like to ask you today, get your feedback on. So these are just sort of icebreakers to get you familiar with the polling software. Now, what top of mind concerns do you have on the topic of this session? So this is an open-ended poll where you can just type in your responses. Are you thinking about access to certain programs? Are you thinking about expanding an existing service, or any concerns you have about services that you use? Just what are your top of mind concerns today? Give it another half a minute or so to see if anything comes up. All right, concerned citizen, thank you. Excellent. ADA compliancy, wonderful. Okay. Definitely be discussing that as part of this presentation. Accessibility. Cost, okay, thank you. Access a ride. And all of this feedback that you give us in these polls will be stored on the back end so we can have a record of your responses. So if it doesn't show up on the screen, don't worry, it's in the system. You got it. Okay, give it another 20 seconds or so here. And again, you can always put things in the chat. If you think of something and you think, oh, I want to say this or that, you can always add it in the chat. Right, the next question is your experience with public transit accessibility. So you can select all that apply. Are you a provider of these services? Does someone in your household use them, or both? Maybe you don't use the services, but you're familiar with them, or not. You can select all that apply here. Great. So we have a very wide variety of people and their use of public transit accessibility here. Great. Okay, and then the next question is related to this one. Your experience with human services transportation. So it's the same answers, but this is where we're breaking it down into human services versus public transit. Got some providers of these services, clients depend on these services. Great, thank you. I think this is exactly the kind of feedback that we're interested in, so thanks so much. All right. And the type of community that you reside in. Do you live in a large metropolitan area, a suburban area, or even an exurban rural? I mean, we have Putnam County and far east Suffolk County as well, so any exurban rural communities as well. We have mostly urban and some suburban so far. Okay, give this another 10 seconds. And now I'd like to introduce Christian Higgins. He's an associate at Cambridge Systematics, and he's going to give us an overview of the systems in place and what we are looking for in this plan. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think we can get started. So, hey everyone, I'm Christian Higgins, and I'm with Cambridge Systematics and working on the development of the NYMTC long-range transportation plan, and in particular, the development of this coordinated plan. So I'll be walking you through this, through the forum and a few different components of it. So first, I want to start with talking about why we plan for human services transportation, the funding programs around it, and then I want to take you all through a discussion of some of the trends that impact how we plan, how we use the plan, and then at the end, we have some additional interactive survey questions that we'll go through. So first off, as Jerry alluded to before in discussing NYMTC, one of the primary reasons why we developed this coordinated health and human services transportation plan is the Section 5310 Federal Transportation Funding Program, and that's known as the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disability Program. This is a formula funding program designed to meet the needs of older adults and people with disabilities when transportation service provided is unavailable, insufficient, or inappropriate to meet these needs, which is overall a very wide range of needs. Recipients can include state and local government authorities, private nonprofit organizations, and public transit operators as well. Stephanie, next slide, please. So in looking at the 5310 funding program, allocated funding is in part traditional and non-traditional funding, with traditional being required for 55% of total allocated funds. So this includes your general projects directly related to the provision of transportation itself. So replacement and acquisition of vehicles, vehicle rehabilitation, other components such as radio and communication equipment, accessibility equipment, passenger facilities, hardware and software, ITS and dispatch systems and fare collection systems centered around the transportation for individuals, for seniors and individuals with disabilities. Next slide, please. We also have, for the remaining 45%, this is what's known based on federal definitions as non-traditional projects. So this includes additional public transportation projects exceeding the requirements of ADA alone, but still deemed to be very important, of course. Those projects then improve access to fixed route service and decrease reliance on the paratransit service and additional services to assist seniors and individuals with transportation. So again, 45% allocated to these non-traditional projects, the remaining 55% on traditional projects. Next slide, please. Some of the recent examples of funded projects using this 5310 program and highlighting the importance of developing this plan in the first place. We have some demonstrated examples here. So the city of Mount Vernon recently used this funding to acquire a vehicle for their public transportation services. West Fair Rides, which is a nonprofit organization based out of Mount Kisco, and they provide service for seniors and those with vision impairments. They've used this. They recently acquired 5310 program funding for operating assistance. The New York City Department of Transportation has a Safe Streets for Seniors program, as well as a transit access program, which is utilizing these funds. And then also the town of North Hempstead is using this 5310 programming as well. So a very wide range of uses applied across every aspect of the NYMTC region. So highlighting again the importance of planning for related needs, identifying these needs, and accessing these funds. Next slide, please. So as I said before, this is one of the primary reasons why we developed this coordinated plan in the first place. All the potential projects that can be used must be identified in this coordinated plan. So what this plan looks like is an inventory of all transportation services, identification of where transportation service provided is unavailable, insufficient, or inappropriate to meet the needs, and the development of a priority investment and coordination opportunities. And especially that part where we look to identify where the transportation is unavailable, insufficient, or inappropriate for whatever the reason, that's where we'll be looking for you all for assistance there to help us get that into the plan and identify projects that can help with that. Next slide, please. So in developing this plan, key inputs we have are the previous coordinated plan. So these have to be developed every 4 years. The previous one was developed in 2021. This plan will be developed in 2025. There's a lot of useful information there, and it's always good to look at how NYMTC is performing, how we are responding to the previous plan and building upon that. The NYMTC Regional Transportation Plan, which this is a larger part of. Again, that one also adopted in 2021. This current plan will be adopted in 2025. Stakeholder input, which is exactly what the purpose of this forum is today. And then also we look at relevant member agency planning activities. So that includes what's going on across all of the counties, county departments of transportation, other transportation providers throughout the region, and throughout other adjacent metropolitan planning organizations nearby, given that their actions, their planning impacts and influences what we do here as well. Next slide, please. So now I want to take you all through how this planning process works. What are the key inputs? What are we considering here? So starting with the assessment of all available transportation services, and what really impacts planning overall is there are in the NYMTC region alone over 300 plus transportation providers. So this includes general public transit agencies. So this is your MTA, the Westchester B line, amongst others, county operated transit across the region. You have private nonprofit providers, municipal and community services, and then you also have private providers as well. You can see here just a very small proportion of the over 300 transit providers that we have across the region. And we're looking at what they do, what their services provided, and how well they provide that. Each of these services have varying degrees of trip and rider eligibility, service parameters, and geographic connectivity as well. Next slide, please. So as I said here, public transportation, this consists of some of the more well-known and services open to the general public, including the subways, buses, commuter rail. You have the bus systems, ferries, as well as paratransit services. We have privately owned transportation. So this includes taxi cabs, livery services, transportation network companies. So that includes services such as Uber, Lyft, Rebel. We have many private shuttles and services. So this could be shuttle services operated by a large employer. We have commuter vans, and then we also have Medicaid medical transportation. So this is also known as non-emergency medical transportation. And we have also other human services transportation, which, Stephanie, next slide. So this is agencies specialized to meet more specific client needs, such as transporting participants to and from other social services, and transportation for shopping and other needs subject to very specific or varying degrees also of eligibility. So taken together, there really is a lot going on in the NYMTC region, and there isn't, and each of them operating individually. This plan looks to bring that all together, assess them holistically. How well, as a whole, are these services meeting the needs of the region, especially for seniors and individuals with disabilities and other mobility needs. Next slide. So the plan also takes a further look at what the unmet needs are. So we divide those into a few types of gaps. We have service delivery gaps, spatial gaps, temporal gaps, and institutional gaps. So service delivery, that looks a lot at what the actual service looks like. Longer distances, frequencies, the actual span of services and the issues associated with that. We have spatial gaps related to geography. Temporal is time of day. So we see a lot of, a lot of transportation services can be structured around the 9 to 5 work hour. And we see over time that that's evolved to include other times of the day, including nighttime hours, evening hours. Are those reflected in how we plan? Institutional gaps include coordination between agencies. As we said, there's over 300 plus transportation providers across the region. And there is that need for coordination, both amongst private providers as well as public transit. So how do you get from one bus from MTA, for example, to the Westchester B? What does that look like? We have funding and administrative structure. So a lot of operating capital, a lot of funding can make it difficult to coordinate as well services. And that is one of the major institutional gaps that we look at as well. Next slide. We also have knowledge and information gaps, technology gaps, and accessibility gaps. So knowledge and information, access to transportation services is important. And again, with so many services, this information can be fragmented. Technology, there is a lot of technology out there, but there are limitations, of course, and understanding what those limitations are. And then physical accessibility. So these are issues with transit facilities. We know in the NYMTC region, many of these facilities can be quite old and have their own limitations. So understanding what those are is important. Next slide, please. Next, I want to take you through some key trends a little further that are impacting our decision-making, how we plan, and how we assess what the needs are. These particular trends some of them are new, some of them have been around for a while, and others, especially following the COVID-19 pandemic, are more relevant now more than ever. So we have the driver shortage. So this is something that's been going on for quite some time now, and definitely accelerated following the COVID-19 pandemic. It can be very difficult for agencies and operators to secure drivers. There's a lot of competition out there, including with schools, school bus drivers, and then other just in general for employment. We have employment shifts as well. In the New York City region, especially, we have significant increases in employment that occurs beyond just the traditional 9 to 5 hours. So this includes medical and freight, for example, where distribution centers where employment does occur, including throughout 24 hours of the day, including at nighttime. And these trends are expected to grow as well. On the other hand, we do have technology, increasing technology availability that can, when harnessed properly, really positively impact and benefit the provision of transportation. As we talked about previously, we have accessibility challenges, of course. As we see in the NYMTC region, a lot of the physical transportation infrastructure is quite old. And while there is a lot that has been done, there are still many accessibility challenges out there. And of course, we have coordination and funding. As we talked about, there is that need for increased coordination. In terms of funding, following the COVID-19, during and following the COVID-19 pandemic, we did have a lot of inputted additional federal funding through programs such as the CARE Act, which helped greatly and definitely had a positive impact on the provision of transportation. A lot of those additional federal stimuli are set to expire or have already expired. So there is a need to look at innovative methods for working together, including by means of identifying abilities associated with federal programs for local matches and other sources to secure transportation funding. Next slide, please. So in addition to looking at transportation services, we take a look at demographics as well throughout the plan. And this really puts into perspective why the importance of this planning and why we undertake these plans. So in the graph to the left, you can see the proportion of seniors, those over the age of 65, across the NYMTC region. You can see throughout every county, it's at least 13% of the entire population. What's particularly telling, if you look at the graph on the right, is the percent change in the proportion of seniors from 2000 through 2022. So we can see Putnam County, the proportion of seniors grew by nearly 9% to just over 18%. Second place was Manhattan with a growth of over 6%, and actually making it the county in the NYMTC region with the largest proportion of seniors. What is particularly interesting is that the increase in seniors is widespread and occurring across all sorts of geographies. So we can see Putnam, one of the lower density counties in the NYMTC region, with the largest increase in seniors. However, in second place was Manhattan, which arguably the most dense in the NYMTC region and one of the most dense, if not the most dense in the entire country. And third, we have Suffolk, which is a mix of both suburban and lower density. In fourth place, we have Staten Island itself, which is really a mix of suburban and urban. So this underscores the magnitude of these trends that are happening quite quickly, and just very important to keep in mind. Next slide, please. As another additional targeted population, of course, that we look at is those with disabilities. So these are just some of the examples. So in addition to graphs and actual numbers, our plan will look at mapping as well, and where concentrations of these individuals live. So you can see in Nassau County, I believe these are census block groups or census tracts with the highest number of older adults and individuals with disabilities per square mile, respectively, in each of these maps. Next slide, please. And lastly, of course, within the plan itself, we have strategies and actions, which we'll be looking at. So these are just some of the examples from the previous plan that had a bunch of different themes. I'm just taking you through two of those here. We have improving accessibility and information and communication. So strategies to improve physical accessibility include curb extensions to shorten crossing distance, ensuring and increasing pedestrian safety, and the installation of new lifts and wheelchair securement systems and automated announcement systems. on the information and communication side, we have the development of centralized directories of transportation information. So that includes your 511. And then we also have wayfinding and navigation enhancements, and development of a technology platform to integrate and synchronize transportation services and post-discharge medical trips. So these are some of the projects that we're looking to identify, place them into this plan so that they can be eligible for funding under this 5310 program. And we'll be looking to update, we'll be looking to assess how those projects are from the previous plan, and then also how that compares and is updated through this current plan. So at this point, now that we've given you some background information, as we said, we're very excited and interested to hear from you as well about some of your unmet transportation needs and challenges. And these are just some of the things we're looking forward to getting insight and feedback on. And so service inventory, unmet needs, coordination, strategies, and actions. And you can do so. We have these number of survey questions coming up. So excited to hear from you. So on this first question, we want to know, how would you rate your overall experience using public transit and human services transportation, ranging from very satisfied to very dissatisfied?
For those who joined a little later, my colleague Maya has put the Poll Everywhere link into the chat. So all you have to do is click the link, allow WebEx to take you out of the WebEx page, and then participate in the poll. You'll be prompted with the questions.
So far, it looks like we have general degree of satisfaction, but also some neutral and dissatisfied as well.
And we have a comment in the chat, Christian, that it should also be noted that it depends on where in the region you live.
Mm-hmm.
Your satisfaction with the level of service can vary greatly depending on where you are.
Absolutely.
Access to services and all that.
And, that is why at the very beginning, still very broad, of course, but we were interested in knowing where you are from and what type of community do you come from, whether that's urban, suburban, or rural. All three of those geographies have, in some ways, some of the same challenges, but also very different as well.
We have a comment in the chat that this person is disappointed with their services. And then another person said, in terms of accessibility, one side of the river is accessible, the other is not, regarding train service. And some people are feeling reliant on transit service to close that gap.
Mm-hmm. I would assume that the side of the river is referring to the Hudson River itself.
Yeah. Should we go to the next slide?
I think so.
Okay. And here's another open-ended question where you can describe the gaps that we've seen some in the chat already. Let us know what you think. Maybe a service that doesn't, there's a gap between services. Like here in the chat, one side of the river is accessible, one side is not.
And we have left this question purposefully broad to take in a wide range of your thoughts and opinions.
And just to note, all of the chat comments will also be recorded, so we'll have a log of all the things all this feedback you've given us in the chat as well. So don't have to worry that it goes away when the meeting closes.
So we're seeing a few here, especially related to rail service, accessing train stations, gaps in schedules. I've experienced these as well. Gaps between bus connections, that can be very big too. Accessibility issues east of the Hudson. See here, train service on New Jersey Transit or MTA does not staff people to put out platform bridges at raised platforms, particularly on the MTA side in New York and Nanuet and Spring Valley.
Do we want to go to the next slide, Christian?
Sure.
So here is a ranking question. This is the stages of your trip that tends to produce the most challenges. So when you click on an answer, you'll see a little arrow going up or down. And there you can raise it either very important or not as important. So for example, if planning your trip is difficult, that might be, so put something up at the front, at the top. Here we see receiving support when things go wrong. That might be a high priority. Arranging assistance or connecting to other services. And I'll keep scrolling up and down so we can see. It takes a little time for the ranks to show, but it will show up in just a moment. There we go. Okay, so getting from the bus to the destination seems to be the top rank here. Getting onto the vehicle, receiving support when things go wrong, getting from the house, bus or bus stop, transit services connection, planning the trip, boarding the trip, and last, booking and paying for the trip. But it's shifting. It's like a horse race. Getting to and from the bus is catching up. Eco condition and cleanliness has shown a little more importance here. In 6th place.
We see that connections and between transit services seems to be a recurring theme across each of these questions so far.
Receiving support when things go wrong is definitely on the increase here in terms of its, and getting from the bus to the destination. All of these are top 3 here are these connections.
And then number 4, very, very similar to death from destination, is just from home to the service itself.
It's great feedback. Thank you all very much. Would you like to go to the next slide, Christian?
I think so.
And here's another ranking question. These are your top issues impacting effective provision of accessibility. So, for example, not enough services, which has been mentioned, access to information, maybe coordination, too many providers involved, the safety of the service, the standards of quality, perhaps lack of driver training, and then the parameters as well, needing services available during more hours or days of the week. So we'll give this another 10 seconds or so for the ranking to show up. And it will in just a moment. There we go. Service parameters. This is again back to the other feedback of not enough services or coordination services. We go lack of options, access to information are the top 3. Scroll down them. Okay, we can see them all on the screen. That's great. Oops. And we have, parameters are still number 1 here. Give it another 10 seconds or so.
So combined number 1 and 2, we have so lack of options and the actual parameters associated with the existing options. So pretty related.
Do you want to go to the next slide, Christian?
Yes.
And now in terms of human services transportation, same type of poll, ranking your thoughts here and the same responses. So again, the lack of options, parameters of service, like availability, getting information about it, coordinating, feeling safe, feeling comfortable with the service quality. Same questions, but see what the feedback is here in terms of the ranking top issues, and same. Okay, got the same responses here. Although lack of options seems to be higher than parameters at this point, but still those three. Actually, safety is a little higher than access to information.
You know, one of the challenging parts of planning as well is this access to information, and is lack of options related to access to information. Could it be that there are services, but the information provided is not effective enough for enough people to know about those services? So that is one of the qualms or challenges associated that we look at.
And we got a question in the chat. What exactly do we mean by public transit accessibility? Like all types of trains and buses, or ADA accessible? Either Christian, you could jump in, or Jerry, if you wanted to jump in as well.
Yeah, I think we're looking at both aspects. We're not really putting a parameter around it. So it's ease of use, seamlessness, could be ADA related or could go beyond ADA.
Thank you. What do you think, Christian? Do you think we've got enough feedback? Want to go to the next slide?
I think so, yes.
All right, and here is another open-ended question. And this is, you can get as specific or broad as you like, or somewhere in between, or all of the above. What destinations would you like to be able to access through additional services? So you can just type into the poll for your answer and click submit. And also you can type into the chat as well. So we've kept this quite open, so you can give us as many responses as you like. We should be seeing the responses coming up soon. Oh, state parks. Okay. Accessing nature and via public transit. That is very important. I was just thinking about that the other day.
Yep, recreational access.
Universities, employment centers. Urban areas. Yep. Yep. Could be as specific as a grocery store that you wish there was a road public transit to, or accessible service to. Anything. I think we'll give it another 10 seconds. Let folks, anyone who hasn't had a chance to give their feedback. Okay, Queens North and South connectivity train service, only the G train. Grocery shopping.
That's very big as well. There are a lot of services, of course, in New York that are structured around getting people into, through, within Manhattan.
Great. Okay, I think we'll go to the next slide. Is that okay with you, Christian? We move on to the next slide.
Yes.
Right. And the additional times of day, let me just be sure I didn't skip one. Okay, we got that. Additional times of day or days of the week. Might you use this service if it were available? So say, for example, to state parks or to the grocery store, what times of day or the week would you use it for the most part? Okay, I'll say Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah, another feedback we've heard, weekends can be tough in terms of service.
Right. And is there a difference in needs between Saturday services and Sunday services? Actually, Saturday was leading before, so now we have Sunday.
Nighttime hours on weekends, yeah, Monday through Friday. Okay. Great. Early morning, late evening, weekdays. So Sunday is Sunday and nighttime hours on weekends and Saturday daytime. Wow. Sunday's the big one.
Putting into perspective, the transportation needs, especially in the nighttime, as we talked about earlier, there is this increase, especially in large facilities such as distribution centers and warehouses. A lot of these are located, throughout New Jersey, but also into Hudson Valley, Long Island, Staten Island as well. You have facilities like this that operate 24 hours a day, and there are transportation needs, especially a lot of those workers can live in places such as Brooklyn and Queens, or even across Staten Island and other parts of NYMTC. And there is that need to get transportation to these facilities that can be quite difficult to get to otherwise.
To the next poll, is that all right with you, Christian?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an open-ended question here. What types or forms of information would be most useful to you for knowing about available service options? So would it be an app? Would you want email? Would you want to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody? Type of information would be most useful for you?
You can think about this as how you best receive information when you use existing transportation services or anything in general.
Okay, notice of delays or suspended service. That's good for all of us, isn't it? Especially those who rely on connections. Yes, social media updates, Google Maps integration. Great, yeah.
We see with Google Maps, services such as the MTA have become pretty well integrated overall. What isn't as common just yet are some of the smaller services, as well as human services, many of the smaller transportation services as well. So there are opportunities there.
Notifications to phone location.
So notifications based on your geographic location makes sense.
Maybe another 10 or 20 seconds or so, 10, 15 seconds, see if anybody else has feedback on this question. Nothing in the chat so far. But if you have something else you think of as we're talking here, please pop it into the chat as well. Make sure that feedback gets recorded. Oh, we do have an input that texting. receiving a text would be useful. That's in the chat. So text alerts, that would be great. Did you want to move on, Christian?
We can move on.
All right, so here we're asking about what would help with reduced or eliminated fares. What services would those help you, enable you to ride? Maybe something that you don't take as much, but that if there were reduced fares, you might take more. I know where I live, we have express buses and they're wonderful. They're very expensive. So sometimes I don't take those. City trains. Great.
And we see from the earlier questions, financial didn't come up as one of the top issues, but nevertheless, of course, one of the top front of mind, especially with inflation and all the other needs.
Intercity trains. Right. And if there was any ADA or special human services transportation that you think that a reduced fare would help you take more, let us know. MTA trains and buses. Okay, great. Bus services.
Air train to JFK. I know I'm currently in Seattle, and I can definitely attest to the air train since I did fly out of JFK. That's always a little bit of a sticker shock for sure. Express bus.
Yeah, that's so that's mine. Express bus in Manhattan is quite spendy. I'm really, really tired. I just don't feel like the train. I'm just like, all right, I'm splurging for the $7 a ride. You know, it's a lot. All right, we'll give it another 10 seconds or so, see if anybody else has some feedback. Also, there's again, you can pop anything into the chat. Oh, okay, we do have a chat question. The buses do not wait for passengers when the Staten Island the ferry docks on Staten Island. Most of the time people are stranded. Thank you, it's great feedback. That would be so awful watching that bus just drive away and you're just standing there. Thanks for that feedback.
Even coordination within the same agency itself.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. Next question. Good feedback here. All right, anything else? Other constraints for that for you to be able to use a public transit or human services transportation resource? So we've mentioned some of the things in the polls, specific poll questions, but if there's something that you didn't see, you can put it in here. And then in response in the chat, we have about Staten Island, because of the transit being unreliable, just was mentioned. That's why so many people purchase cars, because public transportation is very unreliable on Staten Island. Thank you for that feedback. Are there any other constraints we haven't mentioned? Anything that you've thought of? And, well, nobody said this. Let us know.
Is there anything we missed, both in terms of geography, destination, or an overall theme as well?
Trains and local buses, again, more of that on Staten Island, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly, yeah. And then a request to please keep the public involved with these meetings. Yes, thank you. We definitely will. These are all these meetings, they are being recorded and they're posted to YouTube. You can follow us, our various social media channels to find out about next meetings. We will be having a meeting on micromobility and a couple other meetings coming up in June as well. So
Stephanie,
yeah,
the
go ahead.
question about how would we know about the next meetings? Two ways: our website, which I'm going to put in the chat, and also if you'd like to be on our distribution list, we can add you to that.
Yes, please, Molly. You could sign up for the newsletter. Can't have mentioned everything, really? That's it? But do we cover everything? Usually there's something we haven't thought of. But okay, so thank you. Would like to be added to the distribution list. We'll make sure you're added. Thank you very much. And you'll be able to get up to speed and up to date on various items, outreach opportunities as well. You can also visit Plan 2055. That's our plan development site. I'll put that into chat for everyone. It's moving forward 2055.org. And that's where you can find out more about what we're doing with the plan. And also you can sign up for updates here as well. So that's that you can also see the recordings of other meetings that we've had over the past month. That's all available on movingforward2055.org.
We do have a response here for more communication.
More communication, yeah.
There definitely is this theme of the availability of services, what the parameters of those services look like, and then how information for those services is disseminated. And especially that communication, that access to information is big.
Spatial gap, thank you. It's great.
Yeah, are there any geographies that we didn't talk about that need to be highlighted as important gaps? Modal gaps, so yeah, each of the services does have geographic limitations.
And we do have a chat response from what I understand. It's hard to answer, as I feel like human services transportation and public transportation have different constraints. Sure, you could put those into the chat for us as well, or your thoughts about what those constraints are, or put them in the poll. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the different constraints around those different things. Oh, yeah, walkability. It's another one, whole response here.
Walkability, of course, a big topic. As we briefly talked about, one of the uses of 5310 funding can be for walkability. So the New York City Department of Transportation's Safe Streets for Seniors, they do look specifically at walkability and related issues affecting seniors or impacting specifically seniors, whether geographic or actual types of issues. and do look at implementing solutions for that. So especially in the NYMTC region, there definitely is that important overlap.
Yeah, Christian, we're also holding a series of community planning workshops anywhere in our region, particularly in the suburban communities, at the request of the communities themselves. And one of the major topics for those workshops is walkability in downtown areas. So that's been very much a topic of highlight.
That definitely makes sense. A lot of the communities across the NYMTC region really fully developed or continue to develop, but came about throughout the 50s and 60s, a time when, for good or for bad, the automobile was very dominant, and sidewalks and other features such as that kind of took a back seat. And while we're definitely forward thinking now, there is a lot of work that needs to be done too. Even in an area, a region so forward thinking and dense and urbanized as NYMTC.
Thank you for putting all your thoughts about constraints for human services, knowing how to access the services, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, education and information. Thank you for providing us that information about what are the constraints for you regarding human services transportation.
There definitely is that need to continue to build our repositories of information and also disseminate that in ways that are useful to users. I think over time we can see too, I'm looking at some of these responses, especially about how you receive information. Technology, especially through a smartphone, has become more commonplace. It's not fully there yet, and there will always be that need for other methods, including analog paper-based information. But you do see that increased adoption of and integration of technology, especially into transit operations and information access.
This is great. Thank you all so much for your feedback. So I did put movingforward2055.org in the chat. If you have trouble accessing it from the chat, you can just type in movingforward2055 in your browser. Any other questions you have, please just pop them into the chat. And if you are a planner who has an AICP, you can always go in and log your participation here at this event. And I will put that link in the chat as well, and the link to this event where you can log 1.5 certification maintenance credits. Great. Thank you, everybody. Jerry, did you have any last words, or Adam?
No, Adam will.
Yeah, I really just wanted to thank everybody for the great feedback that we got. It was certainly very helpful for our efforts in trying to put some information together on accessibility. This is great. And also make a similar pitch that Stephanie just made for some of our upcoming forums. I think we've got one scheduled for May 21st on safety and micromobility. We've also got one coming up on alternative energy sources and curb and parking management, and then transportation technology. So we are definitely giving you opportunities for more feedback on a variety of subjects, and we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you, everyone.
Don't forget tonight at 7.
Don't forget tonight at 7.
We'll be here again.
I'm
same
back.
bat
Yeah.
time, same bat channel, 7 p.m. We'll be here.
Sounds great.
Thanks,
Very cool.
everyone.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.